Yo, hopefully you guys are doing well this evening. Nothing crazy going on here, just another Monday. They seem to keep coming no matter what you do. They just keep coming and coming and coming, kind of like a booger sticking to your finger. You just can't get them off. But seriously, no, all is well. The weather's kind of cooling down. Here in SoCal, it's going to cool down a bit, then it's going to warm up a bit, and we're going to kind of go back and forth. So we just hit our first cool down. Where we'll have like 85-degree days, like in the peak of the day, and then at nighttime it'll drop down into the 50s, 60s-ish, you know. And then we have what we call the Santa Ana winds. When the Santa Ana winds come, then then it'll get really, well, for us, really cold. Really cold for us is like constant 50 degrees. So we don't really know what winter is here, but it's just about flannel weather for us. So, but hopefully you guys are all doing well. I see everybody in the chat. Hello to everybody. All kinds of people in there. Cool. Right on. Well, I'm glad you guys made it in here. Hopefully I can meet your expectations. I got a couple things to cover this evening, and then I'll definitely try to get to some of your guys' questions, and we will go from there. Let's see. Do me a favor, too, as usual. If you can put the questions into caps lock, that would be much appreciated because it helps us to make sure we try to get to them. I'm trying to figure out a way to be able to better get to the questions in the chat, because what I'm finding is there's so many questions going by, and when I go and review the chat after, I see that there's all these different questions that I didn't get to answer. So you guys aren't going to make us upset, myself and Justin, the moderator, if you guys repost your questions. It's all good, okay? So if I don't answer it within a minute or two, throw it in there again. And then I'll let you know if it's not something I'm going to try to answer. So, but right on. Yeah, all caps, that would definitely help. So, this evening, like I said, I got a couple things I want to talk about. The one thing I wanted to address real quick was I noticed in the live chat last week, I can't remember who asked about it, but someone asked a couple times, and I didn't seem to get to the question, but someone had asked what this Sporlin box was in the background. Sporlin had sent me like a prototype. It's kind of like a beta test in a sense, I guess. But it's not so secretive, so they don't care if I talk about it, of their BQ expansion valve kit, which I've showed that expansion valve kit on my channel many times before. Basically, they just have a new case for it that's a little bit more heavy duty, which is kind of a cool thing because the other case, it's not that it wasn't any good, but it definitely was a little fragile, the little blue plastic case. Sorry about my squeaky chair. I don't know if you guys hear that, but yeah, so this is their new BQ kit case. This is what it's kind of like a prototype. It's just, you know, a Pelican case or, you know, heavy duty waterproof case basically. And it has their expansion valve kit, you know, built into there, the BQ little thing. And like I said, it's still just a prototype. They're going to work on putting the instructions like they have in the past and different things inside of there. But yeah, it's a pretty nice little case. I think it's pretty cool. They were kind of wanting feedback from everybody. So let me know what you say, what you guys think in the chat about it. It's pretty heavy duty. Doesn't seem like if you dropped it, it's going to break or anything like that. And the one thing I do like about that case is that it's essentially helps to keep the moisture out because it does have like a vacuum seal on it, kind of. I don't know if it's going to go underwater or anything. But one of the things about using the BQ kit, one of my fears is when I would take it into like a walk-in freezer or a walk-in cooler, you know, to build a valve, how much moisture would get into the valves and different things like that if you know, just being in there. I mean, there's going to be some when you open the case, but anyways, that's just a pretty cool little case, I thought. So let's see what we got in the chat. Question here from Sam. How does my company deal with what's the policy for legal recreational marijuana in California? So Sam, so basically as a service company, our insurance wouldn't allow a technician to use pot, basically, even if it's just like the oils and different things like that. Anything that potentially could impair you, our insurance company wouldn't allow us to allow a technician to be on that, even if it was a prescribed medication. It's one of those things that's going to have to, just like any other medications that you get from the doctor, you know, if it says may not, you know, operate heavy equipment or machinery or whatever, we can't have that kind of stuff. So something like pot, yeah, the guys can't be on it, basically. You know, yeah, technically it's not illegal in the state of California, But to our insurance companies, we can't allow the guys to be on that basically. So I really don't have a personal opinion on it. I don't care either way. Doesn't really make a difference to me, but we got to follow what our insurance companies say. So, Scott Savage, have I ever worked with NH3? Is that ammonia? For some reason, I'm thinking that is ammonia. No, I have not. So, what is the best smart prop? I'm assuming maybe probe. Is that what you mean, Abe? The best smart probe? I like the field piece Joblink probes is the best one. So let me see what else I'm missing here. Are there kill switches on the inside of the building or just on the outside? I don't know what you mean by kill switch, the Everything channel. Give me some more context with that question there, bud. Let me see what else we got in here. Are carrier units... Oh, no, carrier units aren't the ones that I work on the most there. I work on, maybe. Yeah, maybe carriers. It's a wash between carrier and Linux. It's probably, no, I would say Linux is the ones that I work on the most. Linux package units, and then carriers would probably be after that. So let's see what else we got in here. Noah Lawrence, you're in school and you're just wondering how you can get a job in the refrigeration field. So first off, Noah, if you're in HVAC school, or you said fresh out of school, what I would highly suggest is just go start knocking on doors. Offer your time. Offer your time for a ride-along. There's going to be companies out there that are looking for new service technicians, so just talk to them. Go up there and be honest with them and let them know your strengths and your weaknesses. Obviously, you really don't know much about air conditioning and refrigeration besides what you learned in school, so it is going to take some time for you to get comfortable. But I would highly suggest for the new guys that are interested, just send an email, make a phone call, knock on someone's door, and tell them what you're all about. Be honest with them, and offer to see if they'll maybe give you a ride along where you can ride with them for a day or two. Offer up your time for free basically for a day or two just to do a ride along to see if you like them and then just to see if they like you. But don't go in there just because you finished school and want to make something completely known to everybody that's in school right now. And that's nothing against you guys that's in school. But the experience that you have on school, in my opinion, my personal opinion, I don't want to see that on your resume. I want to see that you went to school, definitely. But what I don't want to see, I get these inflated resumes that say, I have brazing experience, I have electrical wiring experience, and I have, you guys don't have that experience, okay? So I don't mean I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just saying that's not something that you put on your resume. What you put on your resume is went to HVAC trade school. You can say, here's some of the topics that we covered, but do not put on there that you have experience in those topics because that's very misleading when I'm reading a resume. It's like, wait a minute. No, this guy doesn't have experience. You just learned about it, okay? I know that some teachers tell you guys to do that, but that's not what we want to see on a resume, at least at my company. I just want to see you be honest. And if I'm looking for an apprentice, then I'm going to just look at the person you are. I'm going to do an interview, come in and have you sit in the office and talk with me. And then personally, the way that I do it is then I'm going to take you on a ride along, and then we're going to evaluate your skills and see where you are, see your confidence on a ladder. I had a service technician that his first day working with us, he said he was comfortable on ladders, and he went to go climb a 24-foot extension ladder, and the dude was holding it like I don't think he'd ever climbed a ladder before. So that was something, I guess you can't really learn that in trade school, but those are things they should be teaching you guys, is how to be comfortable. If you're going to be in HVAC, you can't really be afraid of heights. That's I'm sure you could, but that's something you're going to have to work with, things like that. So let's see what else we got going on in here. Let me see. Okay, I'm just trying to get up here and mix. I'm just trying not to miss, like I had mentioned before. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I am going to cover that, Bill. Let me see what else. Let me see what I'm missing. What do I think about? Okay, so Corey Taylor, I just kind of went up here. Guys, I'm not going to go any further than this comment, so repost if I missed your questions. What do I think of the CEFSA? CEFSA. I don't know if that's the right way to say that. I think I struggled with that last time. Just like any certification, I think any certification is better than none. The CEFSA certification is... it's another test, okay? Some people are good at taking tests, some people aren't. It doesn't necessarily mean you're the best technician in the world, but it does mean that you took the time to study and take a test. So I definitely think the CEFSA certification is a good thing. Okay. I do know of people that have that, and I do know of service companies that are CEFSA service companies. I hope I'm saying that right. But yeah, just like anything, like I'm a NATE certification. You know, I have a couple different NATE certs. It doesn't mean that I'm the best technician in the world. Okay. It just means that I was able to pass a test. But the cool thing about NATE and CEFSA and I can't think of the ESCO certifications and different ones that they have is that most of them require that you do continuing education hours. And that's something that I'm big on. You know, it's not so much that you pass the test, it's that to maintain your certification, you have to go to continuing education classes basically throughout the year and continue to learn. So that's the biggest thing for me is that you're willing to make a commitment to maintain a certification that requires you to continue your education. That is a big thing for me as a you know, a business owner, you know, for a technician, for someone that's willing to say that they're going to, you know, put out this much time to learn new stuff every year. That's great. So, all right. Okay. So Bill, you said, how do you turn off the auto bypass on those Linux VFDs? Okay, guys, I'm going to go into this right now. So if I miss any more questions after this, we're going to have to repost them in there, okay? Because I don't want to get lost in the chat. So I'm going to go ahead and start talking about the VFD on the Linux unit. So first off, let's talk about why we have, especially it's spreading across the United States, but why do we have VFDs on majority of our package units here in Southern California, or even split systems, okay? Basically, it's anything over, I think it's 2,000 CFMs. I think it's a 5-ton unit, basically. What we have to have is we have to have a 2-speed blower. I think it really applies to units that are 2-stage, really. But we have to have a 2-stage blower, okay? Most of our units are 3-phase, so instead of putting a single-phase motor in there, what they do is they put in a 3-phase indoor blower motor, and we put a VFD on the unit, okay? And what the VFD does, it essentially acts as a 2-speed motor controller. So it's not really there to vary the motor speed up and down. This is on typical package units, okay? You can get into some industrial stuff and it may have a true VFD. But for us, they typically run at 2 speeds, okay? And the theory behind that is that if you have a 2-stage unit, you have 2 compressors, okay? We have a rule of thumb, and it's kind of a very vague rule of thumb, but we kind of follow it here in Southern California because we have very dry air. But you use about 400 CFMs of airflow per ton of refrigeration. Now, that is a vague rule of thumb, okay, because that can vary all across the United States. But the concept behind what I'm explaining right now is still going to make it all make sense. So with that being said, if you have a compressor running and you load up that evaporator coil, the evaporator coil is potentially going to have condensation all over it. When it has condensation all over it, it creates a static pressure drop across the coil, a bigger static pressure drop than if the coil was dry, okay? So therefore, to still move the same amount of air, we need to speed up the blower. So what happens is when we turn on our second stage, now that coil is going to get even more wet, okay? And theoretically, the airflow is going to reduce basically because the static pressure drop as the coil gets wetter and wetter is going to go up essentially, okay? So what we do is on first stage, we run the blower usually at like 30 or 40 hertz, okay, whatever that is, and airflow wise, just to maintain the proper airflow for the single stage compressor. And then when the second stage comes on, they speed up via the VFD and move more air, okay? Again, it's trying to reduce the amount of waste because on older systems, we had a 10-ton package unit that had 2 5-ton compressors. So theoretically, we should be moving what is that? 4,000 CFMs of air, right? I think if my math is correct. Yeah. So 4,000 CFMs of air. Well, we would, because we didn't have a VFD on the unit or a 2-speed drive, we would have to run 4,000 CFMs even if we were running just 1 stage. So it's just like a silly energy savings thing. Now, my personal opinion on the matter is that the VFDs are still a little bit too expensive and the failure rate is still a little bit too high. They're not installed in the best perfect locations. They, in my opinion, they really shouldn't be installed inside of a package unit. So, you know, but that's, I'm not here to bitch. So now with my particular Linux unit that I made a video about, when I talked to tech support, I just told them, hey, what are things that would cause this drive to fail other than someone pushing in the bypass contactor, okay? Because that's something that can happen, and I kind of explained it in my video, is that there's a second contactor there, and if you push that in, you're going to send non-modulated voltage, I guess modulated, or I don't know if that's the right term for that, but to the motor that's having a modulated, it's just not good. It sends power to the wrong side of the drive, essentially, through a backfeed, and it can cause the drive itself to explode. So when I talked to tech support, they said, really, there's not much in there that's going to cause the drive to blow up. And the unit does have phase protection, but that still wouldn't cause the drive to blow up either. So we kind of started talking when I was talking to the tech support guy, and he just basically said, you know, what I like to do is he wanted me to go ahead and turn off the auto bypass feature. So that particular Linux unit, not every single one has this, but that particular one is a higher end unit, and it has an auto bypass feature, meaning that if the unit itself recognizes that power is being sent to the VFD and power is not being sent to the motor, then what it'll do is it's supposed to turn off power to the VFD and then bypass the VFD by pulling in another contactor and sending direct power to the motor. Okay. Well, the technician on the phone basically said that his opinion is that we need to turn that automatic feature off because he thought maybe that's what was causing these drives to fail in the way that they've been failing. And we have had a high failure rate of the drives blowing apart. I thought that his logic there was pretty on. You know, I thought it was a pretty good idea that he had, and so we went ahead and turned that off. So what we did was we went into the Prodigy control board, we went into the VFD settings, and it literally just asked you, do you want the bypass to be auto or do you want the bypass to be manual? And so we just set the bypass to be manual inside the VFD setting, inside the Prodigy board settings. It was literally like 4 clicks and hold down the enter button, and we just basically turned the bypass to manual. So that was Linux idea, and I kind of am going with that one, and I'm probably going to start doing that on every single Linux unit that has that auto bypass feature. Let's see what else. John Anderson, do I mess with any residential wine chiller systems? No, unfortunately I don't, bud. So, right on. Huge Bananas. Interesting name there, bud. Let's see what else. Explain a dual pressure control, Corey Taylor. So a dual pressure control, there's nothing special to a dual pressure control, okay? So on an air conditioning system or refrigeration system, we're going to have a safety control on most systems, not all, but on most, that's built into the unit that it can act as a couple different things. We're going to have a low side pressure switch, which is essentially going to protect us from a loss of charge. So if there was ever a giant leak and we lost all the refrigerant, what we don't want is for the compressor to keep pumping. After a long time of the compressor pumping air, we can create problems within the compressor. The compressor can overheat, different things like that, okay? So remember that our compressors are refrigerant cooled. The oil can get contaminated, different things like that. So if we're not bringing refrigerant back to the compressor at the proper superheat, then we can have overheat issues. You can run into all kinds of problems. So we put a low pressure control in the system. Same thing on the high side. You don't ever want the condenser fan motor to fail and the compressor to keep pumping because the heat of friction builds up the temperature inside the system, and the pressures keep rising, right? Because the temperature and the pressure correspond with each other. So instead of having 2 separate switches, we combine those 2 switches into one. Electronically, inside of a dual pressure control, for the majority of them, the low side and the high side are essentially just wired in series, and you literally have 2 wire connections on the pressure control. Now, there is some that have 4 wire connections, but that's a microset control, and that one's a little bit different. But the standard dual pressure control will typically have 2 connection points, and if the high side opens, then it basically opens the circuit, and if the low side opens, it opens the circuit too. So it's really not much to a dual pressure control. It works off of the concept of a bellows inside the control. Hold on. This is an idea and an example of a bellows. Okay, this is not the same one that's in a dual pressure control. But what this does is this allows refrigerant to come to one side, and it applies mechanical force to the other side. So refrigerant theoretically could come in this side, and then the mechanical force from the bellows contracting or pushing up, could close a switch, open a switch. It could do anything. Now, this is out of a pressure regulating valve, but the same concept still exists. This is a bellows here, and it basically just applies, refrigerant pressure and, converts it to the other side to a mechanical force that doesn't let the refrigerant interact with the electrical switch. Okay, so this just applies the pressure, and you can just see I'm just squeezing it down. So as the pressure, it will expand as the pressure increases, or different things like that. So this is just a bellows, and these are inside of a pressure control. So this would be high pressure would be coming in and basically pushing up, and could do the same thing on the low side too. So it's the same concept. This isn't the exact thing that would be inside of there, but it's the concept of using the bellows to apply refrigerant pressure on one side and mechanical on the other to where they don't mix. There's also different types of pressure controls. There's small little what we call peanut pressure controls. Those ones just twist onto a refrigeration system. So hopefully that helps you there, bud. Let's see what we got going in here. Abe, you asked if I can show a video working on CO2. Unfortunately, I don't work on CO2 systems, so there's not really anything I can help you with, bud. LSXMO, how much footage do I capture on a daily basis, and roughly how much of it is actually used? That's a really good question. I actually capture a lot of footage on a daily basis, and I would say if I capture, on average, if I film every day of the week, I can probably use 2 to 3 days of footage. Sometimes you start filming and then you go downstairs to finish filming and the restaurant's got music playing. And I've got footage where I've got music in the background and I can't put that on YouTube because I'll get a copyright strike. So some of it I've thought, hey, I'm going to go over there and narrate through the video, but it's just so much work when you have like a 40-minute video and then you got to stop and narrate to try to make hand movements and different things match up. It's just kind of not enjoyable. So I do have a lot of unused footage. Other times, I start filming and then things get crazy and I just can't pick up the camera to finish. So yeah, I definitely have a lot of unused footage and unusable footage, basically. So it's a very common thing that I run into. Let's see. Have I worked with inverter AC units? Yeah, I've worked with a few. I really got nothing bad to say about them yet. So, let's see. Let's see what else. Okay, cool. So I'm going to go ahead and get to a couple more things I have on my list here. So the next thing, I think it was Ernesto that asked me, HVACR vlogger. I don't know if you're in here, bud, but I know you had asked me a question about how I got a hold of technical support in the short amount of time. So technical support's another thing. If you are dealing with restaurants, refrigeration, technical support can be a chore sometimes. I do lean on the manufacturers for help when I need help, okay? I'm not all-knowing. So yes, when I want to try to figure out, pick the manufacturer's brain on a certain problem that I'm having, yeah, I'll give them a call. Different manufacturers are better at answering the phones. I deal with, one of the more pleasant ones that I deal with actually is Delfield. They're a refrigerator manufacturer. I deal with them quite often and I get through usually pretty quick. Occasionally things can get crazy. What you need to know is you need to know the right times to call. I can tell you that, let's see, 10 a.m. East Coast time, 7 a.m. West Coast time is the worst time to call technical support because the entire country is usually calling them on a Monday, or I should have said on a Monday. Okay, that's the worst time because people usually have problems over the weekend. HVACR North, dude, thanks very much, man. I really appreciate it. What was I going to say there? Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. But yeah, it just depends. Different days of the week are better to get a hold of them. But one of the things that you need to learn when you're dealing with restaurants, and this goes to you, Ernesto, HVACR vlogger, is because he deals with a lot of the same restaurant chains that I do. We don't talk about them in public forums and different things like that, but I can tell from the restaurants he's working at, and I know he can tell from the restaurants I'm working at that we work at a lot of the same chains. And some of you other guys that are in here may too. I choose, on a side note, guys, I don't mention the chain names or the restaurant names that I work in because I want to protect the identities of the restaurant. We don't want to cause any problems. I don't want anybody getting angry, okay? So when you guys try to guess restaurant names in the comments, I just delete those comments because I don't want to mention any restaurant names. Even when you guys guess the wrong restaurants, I delete those too. But one of the things that you need to learn is when you're working with chain restaurants, especially, a lot of them have national accounts. For instance, majority of my chain restaurants have a national account with Lennox. Lennox basically makes an agreement with them. They sell direct, which I don't agree with, but it's one of those things you can't control. But as part of the thing with them selling direct, they have a special phone number that we get to call. Oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes, the national accounts technical support phone numbers will get us through a lot faster. Same thing with, it just depends on who you're working with in different restaurants. If you happen to be a warranty representative for Manitowoc ice machines, you can get through a lot faster. I am not a warranty representative, but you know, it just depends. So you just got to kind of learn which national accounts or which restaurants have national accounts. Oftentimes too, when they have national accounts, they usually have discounted pricing too. So you can actually get things at different pricing and different stuff like that. So let's see what else we got in the chat here that I'm missing. Oh, you know what? I can turn these on real quick. Let's go. Enable. And there's that. Hopefully that I turned on the movie quote that I'm going to put in here. Hopefully it doesn't bombard you guys all with. Sometimes I don't understand how Nightbot puts these movie quotes in here. So let's hope it does them in order. How often do I work with systems using glycol chillers? Well, I work on the tiny glycol units. I don't work on the big giant actual industrial chillers. But yeah, I work on beverage systems like beer power packs and different things like that that use glycol, and they circulate glycol over, you know, line runs, and they cool down the beer line. So I work with those quite often. I'd say probably about once a month I'm working on a glycol unit for like a beer chilling system or something like that. Let's see. We have those same numbers for ice. Oh, okay. Yeah. I see there, Ernesto. Yeah. Yeah. So certain, the chains that we work in, bud, there's a bunch of them. You can message me privately and we can talk about it a little bit more. So, could I possibly explain pumping a system down to make TXV repairs on the fly? Yeah, sure. Frank Bradley. So the concept is that, hold on one second. I don't happen to have a king valve here with me, but we have a visualization of a receiver. So on the top of this receiver, we're typically going to have a king valve, and that's a shutoff valve. So on a system, now even on a residential air conditioning system, the condenser kind of acts as a receiver as long as it's not a microchannel. If it has a microchannel condenser, you need to be very careful about trying to pump it down, especially with 410A. Be very cautious. Most people advise you not even to try it, okay? So you need to be very careful. If a microchannel system was overcharged on a residential unit and you tried to pump it down, you could have some issues with the condenser exploding, people getting hurt, things like that. Not like fireball exploding, but you know, lines blowing out and different things like that. So you want to be very cautious about pumping down a system. But on a refrigeration system, we have a receiver. This is a receiver right here. It's missing the top, but we would have a king valve. So the theory is that if I shut off this king valve, this receiver is meant to act as a storage tank. So the compressor will continue to run until the low side gets low enough that the pressure control, the low side pressure control, cuts the compressor off. Okay, the valves in the compressor, you have one that draws and one that pumps. You have a high side and a low side valve. So as you're drawing refrigerant from the low side, it's pumping it via pistons, okay, or if it's a scroll compressor, via the scroll mechanism, but you have a separation between high and low inside your compressor. So when the system's being pumped down, we close down the liquid line coming out of the receiver or at the king valve, and the system continues to pump, and what it does is it stores all the refrigerant in the condenser and the receiver, and then the low side goes lower and lower and lower until the low side pressure control cuts it off. When that happens, we make sure that our valve is closed on the receiver nice and tight. We can turn off the compressor, and you could let the residual vapor that's in the low side out of the low side, and then you could work on everything that's on the low side of the system. Once you do that, everything on the other side of this valve going downstairs or going to your system, if it's done right, should theoretically be out of refrigerant. So you can open up that side of the system now, and you can work on the evaporator coil and the expansion valve, okay? So that is how pumping down a system works. Hopefully that works for you, and I can try to explain it maybe in a video that I make soon. I probably got videos where it explains pumping down too, so hopefully that answers your question there, bud. All right, let's see what else we got. Just heard Daikin is no longer 410A. R30. Yeah, I've heard about some of those people getting rid of 410A. I think Carrier's doing that too, right? They're going to that new weird refrigerant. That's what I've heard. Yeah, I've heard Daikin and Carrier are both doing it. So if Daikin's doing that, that means Goodman's going to be going to it too soon then, right? Because, yeah, they're the same thing, right? So who makes the best RTU in my opinion? So HVAC Kid, as far as the best RTU, it really is about, it's really about what you're comfortable with, okay? So I'm super comfortable with Carrier package units, with Lennox package units. So therefore I find that I like to work on those better. Okay, it's not that any of them is better than the other. I really don't care to work on York units, but I don't work on York that much. So I imagine if I worked on more York units, then I would be more comfortable with them. So, you know, it's kind of a hard thing to say which one's better, but which one do I like working on the most? I like working on the Linux unit the most. So, let's see. If it has a microchannel, use a grenade to clear the lines. Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, just go ahead and move it on out. Any tips on diagnosing a reversing valve? Not really something I can tell you over the live stream there, Sam. So feel free to send me an email. I can try to get back with you. I'm a little behind on my emails right now, but I'm trying to catch up with them. So, Kyle, so as far as a hot swap, yeah, that's an interesting thing. So a hot swap is something that you have to decide whether or not is de minimis loss, okay? So, you know, the EPA defines de minimis loss as you've done everything you can to make sure that you've recovered all the refrigerant out of the system. There's always going to be a little residual refrigerant, okay? I guess it would be an argument in court on whether or not a hot swap would be a de minimis loss case, okay? So, but basically what you can do is you can pump down a system, and this is a very common thing, and I would argue that it is de minimis loss if you do it right. But you pump down a system to a very low pressure, usually like 3 to 4 PSI, and if you change the power head really quick, the amount of refrigerant that you lose is so minimal, it's not even funny. And I'd even argue that the amount of refrigerant, if you do a hot swap right, that's where you change the power head under a very low pressure, that you would vent more refrigerant when you put your vacuum pump on the system and try to properly evacuate the system than I would of doing a hot swap. That's my opinion, okay? But I'm not talking gas pissing out everywhere and you're trying to screw it on. That's, you know, venting refrigerant. But if you do a hot swap down to like, you know, 4 PSI, something like that, and then just have everything ready and swap the power head really quick, I can do it in like 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, just twist that thing on and be done. The amount of refrigerant, in my opinion, that I've lost is less than if I would have opened up the system to atmosphere and evacuated the system. Because when you evacuate the system, you're venting refrigerant out of the system. You've got air in there too, but you're pulling refrigerant out of the oil, and you know you're blowing it out. So yeah, that's an argument that one could make on that one. So. So I only do commercial. Yeah, I don't do any residential air conditioning. Commercial restaurants is all I do. Oh, okay. So Frank, yeah. So hopefully I understand. Hopefully I explained that in what I said. But yeah, basically I'm just going to pump the system down to a low pressure, get everything ready, unscrew the power head, screw the power head back on under really low pressure. So hopefully I think I just explained the majority of it there. Let's see. Why do I recover with a cylinder inverted through the vapor port, Sean? So I'm kind of like a silly person that saw something on the internet and it makes sense to me. So Appion, the recovery machine manufacturer, okay, and they also make the fat recovery hoses and different things. They had put out like a tech tip about speeding up the recovery process, and a couple of the things were taking out the Schrader ports, different things like that. You got to remember that Appion was one of the first people to really be pushing that on social media. I know it's always been a thing, but Appion really made it publicly known that taking out the Schrader ports speeds up the recovery process. Not evacuating through a manifold set speeds up the recovery process. And another thing that they put out on a tech tip was recovering into the vapor port of your vacuum cylinder. And unfortunately, I don't have a picture of it, but if you take a recovery cylinder and unscrew the valve assembly from the top of the recovery cylinder, what you're going to find is that the liquid port has a very small dip tube that's smaller than a 1/4 inch ID. It's very small and it's very restrictive. And that dip tube on a 30-pound recovery cylinder is about 18 to 20 inches long. So if you're pumping liquid into the 1/4 inch port on the liquid, you know, port on the receiver tank or recovery tank, then it's going to have to go through that very small diameter. It's something like 3/16 of an inch or something like that. And that in theory is a restriction. So Appion had put out a thing that if you pump refrigerant into the vapor port, there's no restriction, and it's just an open flow into the tank, and then just invert the tank and, you know, pump it in that way. And so the refrigerant will just build up in the tank. So that's the process and the theory behind inverting my tank. Now, whether it scientifically makes it go faster, I don't know. But when I pulled apart a recovery cylinder and looked at the restriction that was inside of there, I was kind of like, yeah, this makes sense that flipping over the tank and pushing into the vapor port would speed it up. So I tend to do it that way. I really don't ever have to use those subcoolers when I'm recovering refrigerant. I just will invert my tank, put it in ice water, use 3/8" hoses, and go to town. So, let's see what else. Can you explain again R290? What about R290 do you want to hear, Tom? Give me some questions, and I'll try to answer it as much as possible. Adam, you said a Hale air conditioner unit and the compressor is very loud. You put oil in it and it gets louder. It's a 20-year-old unit. What do you think? Pressures are 180-10. 180-10, first off, the pressures don't mean much to me, but well, it kind of does. At 10 PSI low side pressure, you got a problem there, bud. You need to figure out what's going on. I'm not going to give you the answer, but if you look at your vapor saturation temperature, it should tell you everything. Your vapor saturation temperature on the low side should not be, or the low side pressure should not be at 10 psi. So you've got a problem there. Something is restricting the refrigerant. You've got a blower motor not working. Something's going on. Okay. So I can't really help you over a live stream, but you got an issue. Have I ever worked on Hussman refrigerator freezer units? I've worked on some Hussman like fish cases, like static fish cases that did not have fan motors. And then I've worked on the fish cases that had fan motors too, but I've never worked on a refrigerator freezer through Hussman. Let's see. Is there any system that I wish I had more opportunity to work on, gain experience with? Yeah, I'd love to learn how to work on chillers, industrial side, but unfortunately it's not something that my company's ever going to pursue because, it's too difficult to jump into that field not knowing what we're doing. So, we're just staying in the restaurant side. Let's see. Am I a licensed electrician or is HVAC a gray area involving both? Scott Savage. So HVAC is a gray area that involves plumbing, electrical, and air conditioning. And, well, yeah, plumbing, electrical, and air conditioning. We deal with gas pipes. We deal with electrical. There's a fine line between I'm really allowed to do my electrical. It is a real gray area. I'm allowed to do electrical pertaining to my units, okay? The gray area is once I start installing breakers in a panel, that's a little gray, whether or not I'm allowed to install a breaker. You do technically have to have a separate contractor's license to be an electrician. I do not have an electrical contractor's license. Actually, I should say we do not. I am not the license holder of the company. My dad is. But I'm going to have to get my license eventually because he's retiring. But anyways, that's a whole nother thing. But yeah, so it is a big gray area in the air conditioning and refrigeration side because we do the work of a lot of people. A lot of times we have to be carpenters when we're framing stuff out on the residential side. We learn how to work with metal, electricity, refrigeration, plumbing. We do a little bit of everything, roofers, all kinds of stuff. So let's see. Do I ever reuse recovered refrigerant? Yeah, in the same system. The EPA law says you're not allowed to use recovered refrigerant unless you put it back into the same system on the same location. So, yeah, I do use it in the same system. If I have clean refrigerant that I just had to pull out to change a compressor that wasn't burnt out, then yeah, I'll put the refrigerant back in, definitely. Do I use the same precautions with R600 as you do R290? Yeah, you definitely would because R600 is a flammable refrigerant, so you would definitely want to use the same precautions. Purging with nitrogen, that kind of stuff for sure. Let's see. R290, what applications do I find it the most? I find R290 the most in refrigeration systems. I work on the restaurant refrigeration, so pretty much every new refrigerator they're installing in the restaurants is becoming R290. So let's see what else. Which are better, reciprocating or scroll compressors? That's a loaded question. I believe that they say scroll compressors are more efficient than a reciprocating compressor, but I find that with scroll compressors, we tend to have more overheat issues. We tend to have more, definitely more overheat issues. Scroll compressors don't like to pump down, so there's goods and bads to both, okay? I prefer an old piston-driven, hermetically sealed compressor, or even a semi-hermetic, even better, but semi-hermetics are so expensive and so heavy. Cool thing about semi-hermetics was you can change a valve plate on them super easy when you had weak valves, so you were rarely changing a compressor unless you had a burnout. Would I explain how to check the recover to refill 80% with heat source and what kind of heat source? Abe, that's the loaded question, bud. you don't check a recovery cylinder with a heat source. That's not how you do it. If you want to fill a recovery cylinder, what you need to do is you need to calculate the amount of refrigerant that you can put into the system based off of the type of refrigerant. So you need to talk to the manufacturer of that tank, or there's some charts on the internet that explain how much of a certain refrigerant, a 30-pound, which again, you need to be careful because just because you call it a 30-pound tank, majority of 30-pound recovery tanks are actually 26-pound tanks. This is where, you know, if you go ahead and get your EPA certification, it explains how to figure out the proper process to fill a recovery tank, okay? I don't highly suggest that you don't try filling a recovery tank with refrigerant unless you're properly trained and certified, because nobody wants you to get hurt. If you overfill a tank, it can lead to an explosion. You can get hurt, different things like that. So you want to be very, very careful. Let's see what else. What we got. Just trying to go through your guys' questions here. So what do I do with a full cylinder of contaminated recovered refrigerant? I'll just simply, when I have a recovery fee that I charge the customer when I recover, and I just go ahead and take the cylinder back to the supply house, and the supply house disposes of it for me. So they take it back to a manufacturer. There's several different manufacturers that clean and refine refrigerant, and they'll recycle it and then they'll resell it. So that's typically what happens. So when I go to a customer and I have a system that, let's just say, burnt refrigerant, what I do is I just go ahead and let my supplier know, hey, I've got contaminated refrigerant. They charge me a nominal fee for the contaminated refrigerant, and they dispose of it. If it's not contaminated, I still take it back to them. They charge me a fee and they dispose of it. There is some supply houses out there too that will give you some money back if you try to bring them back, like R22 refrigerant and different things like that. So there's different programs you can use. Let's see what else. Yeah, R290 is all over. Delafield, True, almost all manufacturers. So, do I work on chiller and cooling towers? No, I don't. So, let's see. Your message is repeating itself, Bill. I haven't seen your message there, bud. What's it say? Okay, let's see what else. Hey there, Ted. How you doing, bud? Is an old KeepRite condensing unit. Jeff Sutherland. I don't know what you're saying there. Am I missing part of a comment? Let's see what else we got going on. Okay, so Molly, your train unit pressures are 150/20. The vapor saturation temperature is 68 degrees Fahrenheit. I replaced the expansion valve, blower motor, and the condenser still as it uses HCFC refrigerant. I can assure you, Molly, that the vapor saturation of 20 psi R22 is not 68 degrees Fahrenheit. So something is wrong there. If your R22, I'm looking at a pressure chart right now. If your R22 is at 20 psi, your vapor saturation temperature is -5. With those pressures on a residential air conditioning system, you have got a low pressure problem. Something is wrong. Yeah, definitely got something wrong there. Let's see what else. Is a KeepRite condensing unit any good? Sure, KeepRite does make a decent unit. I don't work on a lot of KeepRite equipment, but I've come across it a few times. And yes, I do find that it's pretty decent equipment. So other people may have something different to say about it. But yeah, everything that I've come across with KeepRite has been fairly decent. I tend to see KeepRite equipment in convenience stores, K-stores, different things like that. And then I know that they have higher end lines. I believe they do some supermarket stuff and things like that. Hey, thanks, Ralph. Really appreciate the super chat, man. Thank you, guys. I think I saw another super chat come through here too that I missed. I really appreciate it, guys. That's really cool of you. Thank you. Thank you. Let's see what else. Pros and cons to working on restaurant equipment. The pros... That's a really hard question. A lot of people don't like restaurant. I'm going to start with the cons. The cons are it's greasy. You're working in small spaces. Kitchens can be very crowded and very busy at times, so it can be a little bit stressful. I enjoy it because that's all I've ever done. I've always worked in restaurants, so it's just something that, I'm used to. I get to work on all kinds of different stuff. One day I'm working on an exhaust fan. Later that day I'm working on an ice machine, a walk-in cooler, an air conditioner, different kinds of problems, but then there's also some repetitive problems. You get water damage problems where restaurants are cleaning their floors at night and they're getting their new equipment wet and it shorts out the circuit boards and different things inside of it. So you get to investigate a lot of things and you get to troubleshoot some interesting stuff, trying to figure out in your head what someone might have done when you have a consistent water damage problem that keeps happening on a unit. Now, what are the good things about working in restaurants? I mean, some people say you get access to free food. I don't know about that. I really don't encourage my guys to take free food, but I do know that restaurants do offer it a lot. I personally don't eat the food a lot because I used to eat it a lot, and I just realized I got burnt out on restaurant food. Other good things about restaurants. I don't know. That's kind of an interesting question. I'll have to think about it some more. One of the things that kind of stinks about restaurants too is, the hours. You do have to work some crazy hours sometimes. There's more companies out there that do this than I do. We typically don't work overnight things, although ironically, I have to do a late night system thing tonight where I got to go out at 9 o'clock at night and do a pump down on a system because they're replacing a cook's line in a restaurant. But I shouldn't be there too long. But, depending on the service company you're working for, some companies do night work a lot. So it just really depends. But with restaurants, yeah, they typically want you to be a 24-hour service company. I guess one of the benefits to restaurants is you have consistent work pretty much year round for the most part. If you're working for a good company, you're going to be pretty busy. There's going to be service calls that come in, refrigeration, air conditioning, and ice machines all year long. You're definitely going to get an influx of service calls in the summertime, and it's going to get busy. But during the wintertime, for the most part, you're still going to stay pretty busy, So that's definitely the one benefit for sure from restaurants is they, for the most part, keep you pretty busy. So let's see what else. Did I ever struggle with deciding which tools to put in my bag? Yeah, I mean, figuring out which tools to put in my bag. Yeah, that took me some time to figure that out. I'm very particular about the tools that I keep in my bag, so it's taken me, years of working and realizing like, hey, I use this tool oftentimes, and I tend to repurpose tools. So I probably make people cringe when I pull out my set of channel locks and I use it as a hammer because I do. I personally don't buy like Kinetics tools because I use my channel locks as a hammer and I don't want to beat on a set of Kinetics channel locks and ruin them, right? Because those are, $100 channel locks when I can go buy some $20 Kleins from Home Depot. Same thing with my lineman pliers. Those end up being a hammer for me too. I use my lineman pliers to cut big wire and to use as a hammer majority of the time. So I do repurpose a lot of my tools in my tool bag. Now KeepRite, yeah, Carrier basically bought a bunch of manufacturers. They bought Russell Refrigeration too. So Carrier has a bunch of manufacturers under their umbrella now. Or United Technologies, I think, is the umbrella. So let's see. What else am I missing here? Worked on okay, so you said you worked on your first pneumatic system, Kyle. Yeah, I don't think I've ever worked on pneumatic systems. I've seen them, but I've never worked on one. So, all right, let me see what else I got on my sheet of stuff to cover. I'll definitely try to get to your guys' questions. If I miss them, throw them down in caps lock again, and I'll try to address them. Things that I want to talk about. We talked a little bit about technical support earlier. I saw Ernesto, HVACR vlogger, had asked me about how I got through to Linux technical support because he tends to wait on hold for a long time. And, it just depends. Different manufacturers. I had mentioned in the stream for those that just came in that a lot of manufacturers sell national accounts to the restaurant chains. So when some of the restaurants that I work on in some big chains and they have national accounts. So I usually have a special phone number I can call to get usually through to tech support a little bit faster, but sometimes you don't. So, but one of the things I want to talk about with technical support is to be prepared, okay? Because you're going to sit on the phone for however long, right? So have your list of stuff filled out before you call tech support. If you have that list of stuff filled out, then a lot of times you're going to figure out your problem before you get on the phone with them. But when you do get on the phone with them, you have everything prepared. Take your pressures, take your superheat, your subcooling, your temperatures, whatever you're working on, your cut in and cut out, your voltages, your amp draws, different things like that, and have it all written down. So when you finally do get on the phone with tech support, you're ready, and you're on it and you get your stuff done. And also it helps to write all that stuff down because sometimes, like for instance, Manitowoc Ice Machine tech support, you call them and they're going to call you 4.5 hours later when you're on your way home. That's how it always works. You put in a phone call. It's a call center. You tell them your problem, the model and serial number, your company name. And if you aren't a preferred warranty provider, then you're going to wait a little while. So oftentimes in my experience, they call you back when you're driving home. Well, if you have that notepad with you, you can still talk to tech support and say, hey, these were the problems that I had. I watched the unit operate this many times. This is what happened. This is what didn't happen. This is what my pressures, my temperatures, my voltages, you know, so writing down all that stuff does really help. All right, let's see what else. Kyle Carmen, are you talking about Kinetics? I always called it Nipix for a long time too, but if that's what you're talking about. I'm going to be honest. You did get it, Craven Frog Legs. There you go, bud. Are you the first person to get that movie? Or did someone else get it already too? I haven't really been watching the chat. Yeah, it was Fast Times at Ridgemont High. So let's see what else. Oh, Kyle Carmen, you said Nipix. Okay, yeah. So I heard from Brent Ridley, who is the Tool Pro, right? I'm giving it to you, Brent, and Billy Noth, that it's Kinetics. So I thought it was from Brent. Someone said that. They said Kinetics. So I don't know what the right way to say it is. Let's see what else. What's the nicest way to tell a person that lives near you that has a bad compressor and can't that has a bad compressor and you can't sleep? That's an interesting one, bud. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know what I would do. If it was my neighbor, I'd probably go help him. But yeah, I don't know. Let's see what else. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and hit my next thing on my topic here. I covered that. I covered my Sporlan BQ kit. Do not use the phone while driving. Yeah, definitely don't use the phone while driving. But a lot of times I carry my Bluetooth with me. But even driving with your Bluetooth can be a little distracting. So be cautious about that. So, all right. What I want to talk about is another question that someone had asked me. There's some rules of thumb that we use in this trade, and concerning our evaporator TD. Our evaporator TD is the suction saturation temperature. It's the difference between the suction saturation temperature and the box temperature, okay? A lot of times when you're sizing an evaporator coil, your TD is one of the first things you're going to use. Well, once you figured out your BTU requirements, then you're going to find what TD you want to use, and then you're going to select your evaporator based on that. At different TDs, evaporators can output different BTU amounts, okay? So it can be rated for, let's just say 30,000 BTUs at 15 degree TD and 20,000 BTUs. That's not a correct number, but I mean, it could be at, another TD. So let's go ahead and, yeah, so cool. I don't know what person's causing problems in the chat there, but, oh, yeah, just someone being silly. Okay, so, yeah, with the TDs. With a walk-in cooler, walk-in freezer, typically we're going to have about a 10-degree TD, and then I did make a mention the last live stream that on air conditioning systems, sometimes we might have about a 35-degree TD, okay? On some reach-in refrigerators, you can have like a 20-degree TD or a 25-degree TD, depending on the equipment. That's evaporator TD, okay? There is a condenser TD too, but we usually talk about the evaporator TD. So your TD is different from your delta T. This is an important distinction there, okay? Your delta T is the temperature difference between the return and supply. Typically, we use delta T on an air conditioning system. We typically don't use delta T as a metric on a refrigeration system, but if you watch some of my videos, sometimes if I've got multiple coils in a multiplex system, that means one compressor with multiple evaporator coils, oftentimes to verify if I've got expansion valve problems, I will take a delta T across the coil just to kind of help me get an idea which expansion valve might be a problem. But measuring delta T on a walk-in cooler is very inaccurate because you can move that. You can have, let's say, a 12-inch fan blade, and you can move your thermometer probe all around that discharge air, and you'll get different temperatures. So that's why we don't typically use TD as a charging metric or a verification metric of the system working properly. Delta T, I hope I said that right, on a refrigeration system, okay? With our evaporator TDs, one of the things we want to be careful about or understand is that your TD is designed into your equipment. And if you oversize your equipment, you're typically not going to have that TD anymore. So if you have a bigger condensing unit and a smaller evaporator, a lot of times you're not going to get that 10-degree TD, okay? I have seen systems operate outside of the standard design temperature of 10-degree TD. I've seen them operate down to like 6 degrees TD. Your system is going to take longer to come down to temperature the lower the TD, okay? Because you have to have a temperature differential between the evaporator and the return air coming into that whatever cooling medium it is, whether it be air conditioning or refrigerator. If you don't have a temperature differential, how are you going to transfer heat, right? So if you've got a hot box that's 70 degrees and you have a 30-degree evaporator coil, you're going to transfer a lot of heat, right? But if you have an evaporator that has, a 1-degree TD, when you have a 70-degree box temp, you only have a 69-degree evaporator coil. Your heat transfer is going to be very slow, okay? So understanding the difference between TD and delta T is very important. So hopefully that answered the question from the person that had asked me about that. So Zach, thank you very much for the super chat. That was very nice of you. Do I adjust my labor rate when the restaurants supply their own equipment? Unfortunately, HVAC Rookie, with working with chain restaurants, I would love to do that, but they won't let you. A lot of times restaurants supply their own equipment, and that's something that we just have to struggle with as contractors dealing with chain restaurants. It's just one of the downsides to working with chain restaurants. So yes, I just sell them my labor oftentimes. So what's my worst war story? That's a hard one, Scott. People keep asking me that, and I honestly forget to keep thinking about that one. I'll have to think about it. I had one, I kind of mentioned this before. I had a situation where I was asked to come in to a casino and work for an outside contractor, and that just turned into a disaster. I'll try to come up with a consolidated version of that one and tell it maybe on my next stream because it's going to take a little while. But I ended up walking away from the job, sneaking my equipment out of the casino because it was an Indian casino, and I've heard a lot of horror stories about people bringing equipment on and then not being able to take it off. So I snuck my equipment out of the Indian casino, put it back in my van, and drove off, and then called the person that I was working for later on and told him I quit as a contractor and told him he needed to find someone else just because it was such a cluster F. But yeah, I will come up with a version of that and cover it on the stream maybe next time. Let's see what else. Double teamed. You and Adam are going at it together, Justin? I didn't know you guys were into that kind of stuff. See what else. Produce coolers are always very dirty. Clean the coil a lot. Definitely, yes. Do I work on any Danfoss condensing units and or compressors? HVAC kid. Don't really work on any Danfoss condensing units. For a while, the Danfoss Manurup compressors were pretty popular when we were working on a lot of train systems. In the 2000s, we were using the Manurup compressors instead of the train ones because essentially they were kind of the same thing. But no, I don't work on them very much anymore, so... sun goes down, dude. Awesome. Thank you very much for that super chat. Thank you. What else do we got in here? Lower TD through less coiled, less removed relative humidity, which is good for product. Definitely. So, and also too, your TD will change based off of what you're keeping in the box. So, if you got a floral arrangements and you have a high TD in there, high humidity levels, you want your evaporator to be, depending on the product, you want your evaporator to be colder or, warmer, I guess I could say, so yeah, the TD does change depending on your product for sure. Okay, let's see what else. Let's see. I'm coming back down, so if I'm missing something, definitely tell me, guys. What do I suggest we use on produce coolers due to acids from them? You mean the acids eating away at the coils? You can try some of those protective coil coatings. What you can do before you install evaporator coils is you can have... hey, Justin, did you guys high five while you were tag teaming that? Or did you guys high five after you guys finished tag teaming that? I was just kind of curious. Sorry, HVAC Rookie. I got a little distracted there. Okay. Sorry. HVAC Rookie. What do I suggest we use on produce coolers? Okay, so yeah, I would say suggest getting the coils coated before you install them. Refrigeration Technologies, I haven't used it yet, but they do offer a coating that you could put on the coil once you clean it, and supposedly it'll protect it too. So I'd be kind of curious to know. I'd really like to try that one of these days on a system that I have a high corrosive environment. But for those of you that don't know, when you work in refrigeration, yeah, if you have produce boxes or any boxes that store you know, citrus and different things like that, you're going to have a high acidity level in there, and it's going to eat the copper away really quick, just like you live like it was, you know, in the ocean, basically. Let's see. DJ Sub, your question, bud. I don't know where it is. Have I used the new Sporlan Virtual Engineer, Ralph? You asked me. No, I haven't yet. I have seen them posting about it, and I've been interested, but it's just one of those things I haven't jumped onto yet. So I'm definitely going to try it out. DJ Sub. Let me see what else. Let me try to scroll up here. DJ Sub. Why can't the VFD bypass contactor be interlocked with the normal run contactor so that only one can be pulled in at a time? DJ Sub, that's a great question on my Linux unit. I mean, I guess theoretically they could. You know, I just think that Linux probably programmed the interlock into their contactor or into their Prodigy board. So, you know, but yeah, that'd definitely be something that maybe we can do. I'm not a fan of modifying those units though. Just because I don't want to be blamed for anything. But yeah, we definitely could put an auxiliary contact, you know, that just basically runs the coil voltage of the other contactor through the auxiliary for sure. Definitely would be a smart thing to do. No, TJKHVACR. I've never used the Jim Pettinato method of doing superheat evap inlet versus evap outlet. I've seen that on his videos also. I've never done it myself. So maybe one of these days I'll try it and see. When should you clean a 4-ton AC? I would imagine, Ramon, that, you know, in a perfect world, I would clean my unit at least every 6 months. Change your filter, clean the condenser, and have the evaporator clean for sure. Be very careful trying to clean the evaporator yourself if you're not a contractor, because you can damage a lot of things, but it definitely needs to be cleaned on a regular basis, even if you definitely want to try it. Just haven't done it. Except saturated coil temps. Sean asking me to explain saturated coil temps. I definitely can. I don't know if I'm going to go into that on this one, Sean, but I definitely will write that down. And because I want to make sure that when I speak, I'm speaking truth, and I don't want to speak off the top of my head and say incorrect things. So I definitely will cover that topic, but let me do a little more research to make sure I'm saying things correctly when I cover that. So, yeah, definitely a physical interlock, DJ sub air. Yeah, I mean, it's possible. Yeah, definitely a smart thing to do on those things. So, let me see what else is on my list here. I covered that. I pretty much covered everything on there just because tech support well done. Guys, Ralph is in here right now. Ralph is always very helpful and willing to offer help with refrigerant conversions and different things. Ralph works for Honeywell Refrigerants. I'm going to put his email in here right now. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and hit Ralph up. He will definitely be there to answer your guys' questions. So let's see. Doesn't the compressor make the pressures in the AC unit? Yes, the compressor Molly is what creates, you know, it drives the refrigerant through the system. Okay. But the low side pressure, it's a mixture of the compressor pulling the refrigerant back and the expansion valve changing the state of the refrigerant, that causes the lower pressure in the system. So your metering device is the point at which the pressures change in the system. So a really low side suction pressure, like you mentioned, Molly, can be a lot of things, though. It can be an expansion valve problem. It can be a lot of different things. I would highly suggest you send me an email. I can try to help you a little bit more. hvacrvideos@gmail.com. So let's see what else. Have I ever installed a heat pump? Yeah, I've installed heat pumps. We have a few heat pump package units and different things out here, so it's something we run across every once in a while. I wouldn't say that we use them a lot. We have more gas heat than we have heat pumps, but let's see. Hey there, Chris. How you doing? CSC Refrigeration, guys. He has a good YouTube channel too, so check it out. Let's see what else. David, you want to... Interesting. Is your last name pronounced Fux, or is it Fooch? I guess it's going to be hard for you to type that, but that's an interesting last name, dude. So how can I get started as a refrigeration tech? My background is doing diesel. What I would highly suggest you do is find a service company in your area, ask them if they'd be willing to hire someone on to be an apprentice. I would also suggest that you consider, before you go in heavy and quit your current job, maybe enrolling in a community college program for a semester. The reason why I say community colleges is I'm not trying to turn someone away from a private college, but community colleges, you can usually pay per unit, meaning that you can just pay for one class and then decide that you don't want to do it. And there's really not many more costs involved besides a registration fee. So that's why I always push towards people wanting to get into the trade into community college first. But yeah, start at a class, see if it's something you're interested in. If you can, get a job, start working as an apprentice and move your way up. Just go knock on refrigeration companies' doors and, just say, hey, I'm willing to learn. I'm going to school, and see what they have to say. Why do people tell you it's not the compressor when you believe it is? Molly, if you have the low pressures like that, it doesn't sound like your compressor is the issue. It sounds like you got some other issues in the system. It's hard, it's really hard to say without all the details, but like I said, if you send me an email with all the information, what we would need, I'm not going to answer everything for you, but I can definitely help you. We would need your high side and low side pressure. We're going to need your compressor superheat. We're going to need the subcooling from the system. We're going to need to know the evaporator needs to be clean, condenser needs to be clean. You need to be moving the right amount of air. There's a lot of things that can affect your suction pressure. So, all right. Yeah, I'd really, really appreciate if you guys give the video a thumbs up. It definitely helps. Definitely helps the stream. So let's see. What is the trick if there is one for changing a reversing valve? What is the trick for changing a reversing valve? My trick is to cut the valve out as much as possible. So cut as many fittings before the valve, even if you got to go back 12 inches and take the valve out, and then do the difficult connections outside the unit if it's possible. Sometimes it's not, but if it is possible, cut the valve out. That is what I find the easiest. Then use kind of like a heat blocking compound to protect the valve while you're brazing it in. And really don't overthink it either. Just kind of get in there and, you can usually try to plan things ahead of time, clean the valve up as good as possible, but then just try to cut everything out and just go to town. Let's see what else. Do I encounter poor EMS control causing mechanical failures? I do not. I don't really deal with a lot of EMS systems, so I don't really have much to say about that. Have I done any heat load calculations on residential buildings? Yeah, I've done minimal ones. Like I did a heat load calc on my office before I changed the unit. I did a heat load calc on my mom's house before I changed her unit. So I've done a few. I'm not an expert at it. I just use RightSoft, and basically just did a proper load calculation, figured out my duct sizes and everything. So let's see. What else do we got? All right. Who in here has worked on R32? If so, any information? No, Jose Molina, I have not worked on R32, but I have worked on R290. Exact same concept, just following proper refrigeration practices. You can't use a recovery machine. Well, wait, with R32, I don't know. Are you supposed to use a recovery machine? Because I know that's slightly flammable. So you might need to use a recovery machine with R32. Definitely do some research on that one. Yeah, RightSoft. It's WRIGHT. Just Google. Even if you typed in RightSoft like you wrote, it would definitely help you. Have I worked on the same unit 4 times? You did. Yeah, I've definitely worked on the same unit many times. I've gone in many times after, usually learn my lesson after the second or third time that, hey, I did something wrong. But yeah, I've done it. Definitely. All right. I definitely want to get to some more of your guys' questions. If I missed anything, please, please, please put it in here again. I want to try to get to them, guys. Let's see. Yeah, exactly. Only 4 times. Let's see what else. Only 4 times. R32 is a ton of blends. Yeah, it is. Yeah, definitely throw some more questions in here, guys, and I'll try to get to them. Let's see. So the last 2 videos that I had, I'm trying to think of any more questions that I had in the videos. I really didn't have a lot of questions. I pretty much covered them. The VFD was the biggest one with the bypass contactor and bypassing that. The other one was the pressure switch that went bad on the walk-in freezer where it was cutting out too soon. So, and that one I kind of explained a little bit in the beginning of this. Have I ever adjusted a true thermostat cut in and cut out with the screws inside the housing? Mr. Ice, no, I haven't. I've definitely read about that and read how you need to do that with the elevation changes and different things like that. For those of you guys that don't know, on the old mechanical style thermostats, you could actually adjust the cut in and cut out based off of the altitude. So if you went high up in altitude, like if you were working in the Denver, Colorado area or something like that, where you have really high elevations, the air is thinner, different things happen, atmospheric pressure is different, so you would have to adjust the cut in and cut out of the thermostats. But no, I've never done that. I've always seen it, but luckily here in SoCal, it's so low, we don't have to. Ryan Hamilton, dude, thank you so much for the super chat. That was awesome, man. Thanks, bud. Yeah, if you guys definitely try to throw the questions in caps lock. Can I explain the board behind me if I have any before I forgot? But then, oh no, that's fine, Ryan Trials. So the board behind me, guys, I actually have a video on it, and I will look it up while we're in here, and I'll post it in the stream here in just a second. But the board behind me is a duct detector training board. So basically, it explains. I made it for my employees, and duct detector. Sorry, I'm looking at my own video right now. Duct smoke detector, and it makes it's 2 duct detectors, and it's wired in. So that's what we would typically see in a RTU package unit. And let me click on this, and I will get I'm going to share the link right now, and you guys can feel free to check this video out. And it will explain the duct detector training board, because you're going to see me using it right now. So Ted, dude, thank you, Ted. That was awesome, man. Awesome super chat. Thank you very much. So here's my video that I made on a duct detector. It's called Duct Detector Simplified, and it shows that board in action, basically. And all that's there is to show my employees we can power the unit up. I have a 24-volt transformer on there. And so we've got 24 volts applied to the smoke detector, and we have 2 sampling heads, and it just shows how the different relays inside the duct detector work. We see those in package units a lot. They're interlinked into the fire alarm system. We have test and reset stations, and that's actually what I have inside of there right now. And I explain how they interlink, how the fire alarm system wires into them, what they're looking for. Definitely something to check out. I recently myself rewatched that video, and it does have some good information in it. So definitely check that out, guys. Ted, I can't thank you enough, man. Thanks again, man. Really appreciate it. On super chats, me, myself, and iFarmer. Yeah, super chat. YouTube takes 30%. Let's see. Hey, John, do I have experience with your chillers? Okay, let's see what else. You guys are awesome, man. Thanks so much. Let's see. What else am I missing here? Yeah, exactly. I get you on that one, Adam. I've been getting myself into trouble too. I just recently not did my taxes, but I was just preparing for tax season. And yeah, I've been spending a lot on super chats too. So no worries, man. I appreciate it. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, I really like the Linux units, man. The Prodigy board. I'm going to be honest with you though, TJK. I honestly appreciate the M18 boards, which is the board before the Prodigy ones. I liked the M18 because it's not that you can't do everything with the Prodigy. I was just so used to the M18 version that I can still troubleshoot those like crazy. So let's see what else. If I ever have a reach-in meeting temp but struggling to get the box to cycle off, what do I do next? New compressor, new cap tube, weight and charge, new stat. Okay, so it's a true glass. Okay, so Mr. Ice, did you put in the factory control, or are you using a Ronco aftermarket control? And did you put in the factory size cap tube, or did you try to size the cap tube yourself? Oftentimes on the Trues with the mechanical controls, they use a coil sensing thermostat. And if you have the coil sensing element installed in the wrong place, and or you have the wrong metering device or capillary tube, it can cause some issues. Holy crap. Brian Summerall, dude, thank you very much, man. Awesome. Thanks so much, Brian. Dude, I'm blown away. Thank you very much, man. So yeah, Mr. Ice, on that one, yeah, that's interesting. Send me an email, man. I'd like to talk to you some more about that. How do I configure AC installs for an open room? How do I configure AC installs? Megan Smith, I need a little more context there, bud. I can kind of answer that a little bit more. You need to do a proper load calculation, though. That's the first thing you need to do. What's the deal with permits, and when do you need to pull one in HVAC? Jesse Torres, if you live in the state of California, I think technically, and this is bizarre, but I think technically you're supposed to pull a permit to change an expansion valve. California wants money for everything. So yeah, it's ridiculous. If you want to change an evaporator coil, if you want to change a furnace, air handler, you need to, Ted, dude, you guys, thank you very much, Ted. You're crazy, Ted. Yeah, you got to pull permits for everything. And the problem with permits in California too is it opens Pandora's box, because if you want to change, let's say you have a residential house, right? And you want to change your air conditioner. Let's just say you change the condensing unit and the evaporator. You got to do duct testing. You got to have a second party person come in and confirm that you did the work correctly. The duct testers are going to come out and make sure that your leakage rate is at a certain percentage or within a certain percentage. So you definitely have a lot of stuff to do here in California. California is a crazy state, and I know New York is right behind us, and then I know there's a few other states that are following suit. We have an energy code called Title 24. Title 24 really gets involved, and they make you do all kinds of crazy stuff. If you're working with package units on commercial buildings, you have to have duct testing too. You've got to have seismic straps to make sure that they're strapped down properly, which isn't too far different from the states that have hurricanes, where you have to have hurricane straps. You have to do proper building load calculations. You can't just change out a unit anymore. They want to make sure, even if it was existing, they want to make sure that it's correct. There's so much stuff with the permits. Half the time, and that's one of the questions I get a lot in my videos, guys, is people asking me, hey, why don't you just sell them a new unit? Because in California, it costs them 3 to 4 times the price of what we pay for the unit to get them fixed. It's ridiculous what we have to charge them to do a permitted install. So oftentimes we just fix the unit. So you guys with the super chats, man, awesome. Let's see, what else am I missing here? Brian Summerall, dude, thank you, man. Dang, man. All right, first guy to do, yeah. I don't think YouTube will let you do $1,000 super chat. I think they cut you off. Let's see. Yeah, dude, those of you guys, I really appreciate it. The super chats, it's not expected, okay? Nate, you had just said about Patreon. I do have Patreon subscribers too, and Nate, I really appreciate you guys. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's see. You can stay home the rest of the week. Yeah. All right. Unfortunately, I can't because work is busy. I actually have to do a night job tonight. I have a restaurant that is, I just mentioned earlier, they're changing their cook's line, and they got a construction company coming out and taking out a concrete curb and different things like that. So I have to go do a pump down. So as soon as the stream is over, not as soon, I got to be over there like 8:30 or 9 o'clock. I got to go over there and do a pump down on the system, take out the condensing units. I'll just pump the refrigerant into the receivers, and I'll send someone over there tomorrow to go recover the extra refrigerant. And then we'll dispose of the equipment the next time we have a crane on the roof. So, but I just got to go do the pump down tonight. Let's see. What else am I missing here? Let's see. Ryan Hamilton, dude, thank you very much, man. I really appreciate it. Bill, you asked me if I've ever worked on an R290 freezer cooler combo made by Frankie. If so, have I noticed slow pull downs? No, but I have noticed in general slow pull downs on the R290 systems. I don't know if other people are seeing that too. On a lot of the Delfield refrigerators, I noticed that they take quite a while to come down to temp. They work good, but they do take a little while to come down to temp. Have I ever worked on any CO2 systems? Unfortunately, I have not, Sean. So any fuel oil in California? No, Thurman Merman. We really don't run into fuel oil here. We typically have just gas and electric heat, and that's it. And actually, I shouldn't even say electric heat. We have heat pumps and gas-fired furnaces. Electric strip heat is not allowed, so we're not allowed to have electric strip heat because we have such energy problems here. So, yes, Adam, you are correct. There's a lot of generous people in here tonight, and thank you guys very much. I can't thank you enough. So, Brian Summerall, you're not ore. I'm not ore either, and I also wish I was ore. So. Brian is a smart dude. So just saw the Daikin announcement that they were switching to R32 on all their equipment. Yeah, Big Joe. And then we were talking about that earlier. And then I think Carrier's also doing it too. I think they're switching to, they named their new refrigerant too. So let's see what else. What brand headphones are those? These are Audio Technica. Hang on a sec. I'll tell you what they are, Bill. Bill, I think... Adam, didn't I release a video showing my studio stuff? I can't remember if I did that. I don't know if you saw that, Bill. I have a video where I talk about my studio stuff. These are Audio Technica ATH M40Xs. They're nice headphones. I have a second set for when I was doing the thing with my wife. And that's another thing too. People have been asking me about that, how we live the HVAC life. And I still plan on finishing that and doing some more videos with my wife on that. It's just, we got busy and summertime hit, and my wife works. She's a waitress at a restaurant. So she works too. So she's always working. So it just hasn't been convenient for us to do that. But we are going to continue the HVAC or Life series and start covering some other things. So. Do I believe all or nearly all systems will eventually become propane or isobutane? I actually do. I mean, at the rate we're going right now, I wouldn't be surprised. Right now, it's just the United States legal system, basically, that's keeping us from having the charge restrictions raised. So right now on small refrigerators, the charge limitation is 150 grams, which is like 5.67 ounces of propane. But I have heard a lot of rumors that they're increasing that. And I do believe that eventually they will implement natural refrigerants into residential systems. It's going to be a very long time, but I do believe. Honestly, I don't understand why we don't go ahead and implement one of these natural refrigerants like R290 and just have like a chiller type system for a residence. So basically you're going to pump a cooling fluid. Dude, Adam. That's awesome, man. Thanks. Wait, what? I'm confused. What are you doing there, Adam? I don't know why they don't implement chiller type systems, where we pump glycol and stuff like that into there. So I wouldn't be surprised if that happens soon. Let's see. Zam. Yeah. Your channel started to make a little more. Oh, right on, dude. I'm glad I helped there, bud. All right. All right. Let's see what else. You guys in these super chats, man. Thank you so very much, man. Yeah. See, I see what you guys are doing there. I see. See, that's the smart way to do it. That way, who has the bigger wiener? You can just say, your super chat was bigger than the other. Let's see what else. What am I telling my customers with older R22 walk-ins? Just use a drop-in? No, honestly, Mr. Ice, I'm not using drop-ins right now. I still use R22. And my customers, we just explained to them. Another thing a lot of people don't realize is that R22 is not becoming illegal. Okay. R22 is just going to become illegal to import new refrigerant or import and or manufacture new refrigerant in the United States. So there's still plenty of supplies of R22 refrigerant, and that'll happen for a very long time. So, all right, let's see. Thank you again for the super chat, Adam. Awesome, man, dude. All right. Let's see. Let's see what else. I really appreciate your comment there, TK. Thanks for watching from Canada, bud. Let's see what else. HVACR North, what's going on? Oh, yeah, I see you're just DJ Subberry. That's all. Sorry. All right, guys. What other questions you guys have? Throw them in here. I'll definitely try to get to them here. So, no worries, Megan. There's no need. Nobody feel pressured to super chat. Okay, I don't do these for the super chats. That's a bonus. I'm putting my time out there and doing these streams. Don't ever feel bad because you can't donate or anything like that. Okay, I'm fine. All right, I really appreciate it, but I'm good. You guys don't need to donate unless you guys want to. So, but don't feel bad about it. What's your prediction for the future of HVAC? What am I excited for? What am I excited for? That's an interesting question there, Hunter James, because I came up in a time that was old school, and I appreciate the simplicity of the air conditioning systems when we worked on some of the old school systems. And I'm sure some of the guys that have been in the trade for a while can also say the same thing. So part of me is bitter that things are changing because nobody likes change, right? But then I also do like working on things. I like troubleshooting new stuff. I'm going to be honest with you, where I'm bitter is having to help people over the phone that when we have these new things, like, sometimes I can figure things out if I get my face in front of it. But if I have someone else out there that's trying to figure it out and they need technical support over the phone, that's a little frustrating for me because I kind of need to be there if it's something new, like to be able to get my eyes on it and say, oh, okay, like to understand the logic of how something works, or, so that's one of the things that's kind of frustrating about the new technology. But one thing I will say, I mentioned this in my last stream, someone had sent me an email about it. I'm waiting for the day, and I don't want to replace people, but I'm waiting for the day that we can have some smart glasses that don't look stupid, that actually work, that have a camera in them that my technician can turn on and hands free without having to hold his phone up, showing me what's up. Because currently we use video chat on our phones when my guys need help with things. I really want a day when the cameras are high quality, wireless, in their glasses, and then, you know, if they need help, they can turn them on and I can say, okay, yeah, this is what's going on, and I can walk them through things. So that's something I am definitely looking forward to with the technology and the way things are changing. I know it's coming, but right now, the quality is just not there, and the video and everything, it's just not quite there, but it's coming. It's getting better every day. All right, let's see what else we got. You guys, these super chats, thank you so very much, man. I really appreciate it. Hey, any super chat you guys give, it's all good, man. Really, really appreciate it. Dallas, dude, thank you very much. Adam, awesome, man. Hey, Adam, come on, bud. You can post the HVAC Overtime anytime you want, man. You guys definitely need to check out the HVAC Overtime show. Friday nights. It's over on the Shop Talk channel for sure. So, yeah, I want Cyber Eyes. I don't really want to watch my employees work, but when they need help, I definitely want to. Kyle Carmen, have I come across the new carriers with like the Eco Blue is what they call it on the carrier units, I think? No, I haven't. I got a quote for one, and I don't think the price was too much different. Basically, Carrier's going to be replacing their VFDs that they're installing in their units, and they're putting in an ECM blower motor, basically. It's like an axial fan motor. I'm a little leery about the new axial fan motor in the Carrier package units. I think it's on the smaller ones right now because I can just picture that thing covered in grease in a restaurant, and I just don't know how well that's going to work. Zach, thank you very much, man. You guys in these super chats, thank you. But you know, I'm intrigued to see one of the new Carrier Eco Blue units. Again, I think that's what they call it with their new axial fan. I just don't know how well it's going to hold up. So we'll see. Let's see what else I'm missing here. Is that a compressor run tool on top of my shelf? Ryan, yeah, it is. That is a hermetic compressor analyzer up top. That one was my hermetic compressor analyzer. I don't really use it too much anymore, obviously, because it's sitting on my shelf. One of my employees, let me move this chair. One of my employees gave me this one. Yeah, thank you, dude. One of my employees gave me this one. This is an old Annie. I did not use this personally, but I do like the size of this. This is a great little hermetic compressor analyzer. If you guys don't know how a hermetic compressor analyzer works, is it basically has like 3 or 4 different capacitors inside of it, and you can find different start capacitors, and you can start compressors up and test to see if the run component or the starting components are bad. So honestly, don't really use compressor analyzers very much anymore with the 3-in-1 start kits that they have. I've mentioned this before. I don't use 3-in-1 start kits as a permanent replacement, but I keep enough of them in my truck that I can usually throw a 3-in-1 on there, see if the compressor starts, and if it does, then I'll go get new starting components. Also, we have the Turbo 200 run caps, the Turbo 200Xs, and then also Turbo or AMRAD makes a universal start capacitor. So you can test a lot of different things. But the hermetic compressor analyzer was nice. The one I have up on the shelf was even nicer because you can check the ohms of the windings and different things too. So let's see what else. Okay, they're kind of cheap looking, never worked on. Okay, so I'm just kind of getting up in here. Okay, so I definitely answered that. Guys, these super chats, you guys are awesome. Thank you very much. Okay, see what I'm missing here. What is that system on the wooden board behind you, Molly? That is a duct detector, a smoke detector for a commercial package unit. And that is there to teach people how to use one. I have a video on it. I'll post a link again right now. Control V. Here's a link to my smoke detector video. It's called Duct Detector Simplified, and it explains exactly what that board is. So you work at a school district as a custodial, and every time you look up at the air conditioner, you always break down. About 7 years old. Yeah, Roy, it just depends. I'm going to be honest with you. Most school districts don't maintain their equipment as much as possible, at least in the areas that I'm in. Majority of the time, the districts themselves don't allocate enough time, and they usually have too little employees, or too few employees, I guess I should say, and the equipment's usually not maintained as good as it should be. But I'm not judging anybody. That's just my experience from people I've talked to. So that would explain why breakdowns are so high. All right. Oh, well, all right, guys. I need to wrap this up. So I don't know what that noise is. I hear a noise outside my house right now, but I do need to wrap this up. So I'm going to go ahead and hit end on this. And I appreciate you guys coming in here, okay? I'm going to go ahead and fade into the outro music right now.